what frustrates me mostly is the disease we have in our society of loneliness, where people are isolated. So you've got young children full of goodness, they're all born perfect, isolated by parents who are struggling, managing alone, grieving, one parent trying to hold a job down, not enough money, all those things, and losing control, shouting, letting off their steam, without thinking, in automatic mode. We're unconscious most of the time.
Amos Madra.
Christel Cowdrey, it's great to have you back. It's the second interview. There's so much has happened. Obviously, your book, which is doing incredibly well. I believe there's an audio version as well now that the listeners can listen to, rather than just the book itself. How are you, first of all, before we get onto that?
I'm really good because I've just done a really brisk walk. I've done my daily kind of walking past my lovely, beautiful lake nearby, and it's just so good for the soul. So I'm feeling quite rejuvenated. And this beautiful day, isn't it?
Absolutely. It is glorious outside. The weekend is set to be really nice as well. So much for so many people to look forward to.
Yeah, that's why I'm intermittent fasting, because the more we get into summer, the less clothes we wear, right? So I'm walking, I'm not eating until 12:30, and But I wanted to ask you a question. Is that okay?
Oh, wow. We're starting off with you asking me a question. Okay.
I want
A
to
bit
know.
different from what okay.
Okay, a bit different, but I'm interested. I'm interested in, or what is the most magnificent part of Amos Madra?
Ooh, wow. Um, well, that
Voodoo.
depends. I mean, I would probably say if you ask my loved ones, they'll probably say that, he's caring, he's got time for people. He likes to see the best in people. And I suppose, that would be it. And partly that's why I do what I do here. I love hearing people's stories. I love being a part of the whole experience. And it's always good to be together, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I wonder what your mother says. What did your mummy say? What does
She'd,
she?
she'd probably say what I've just said, yeah. I try and make time for people. In this busy life that we'll all live in, we're all rushing, trying to get so much done in a day. But I think sometimes we need to stop, take stock of what's going on, and also just share time with people, because that's the greatest asset that we have in this life, isn't it? It's time, and it's time spent with one another. So time is
Well, that
so
sounds,
important.
yeah, time is precious. You and I look back in 20 years on today and we'll think, wow, I remember that day. Wouldn't it be good to go back to that moment?
Yeah.
Our lives pass so quickly that we don't always really understand how fast. There's that lovely poem that people are reading. It's called The Dash, whenever we were born, dash whenever we died. And that dash is what it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the reason I asked is because I was asking myself the question, because what responsibility do I have of my own nature? So I have full responsibility. So I was saying, if I could be the most magnificent and wave a magic wand on me, I would want to be fully compassionate at all times, really acutely listening. I would want to respond, not react. I would want to empathize, never sympathize. And I would want to really hear what the other person was saying to me. So I'd take stock, and I think for the most part, I do that. And that's certainly through my crisis that I write about in the book. My responding, not reacting, was the key for me. I think it's healed me, and it's shown me the goodness in others, the patience. And also following that, I became an accredited mediator, which was the toughest thing I've ever done, simply because we don't offer people when they're in a crisis, or we always think we know best. We always think that we should give our view. We don't sit back and take stock. And it's really impacted my life. It's been the best. It's the best thing I've ever done, because it's taught me to really listen. So when I was going through my crisis of betrayal, which was brutal, and my sister-in-law, she said, "You never say it was brutal. It was brutal." It was brutal. This was somebody who'd held my children at my christening and became a godparent, and sort of enough on that. But to try and take stock of something so shaking the foundations of one's life happens to all of us at some point. And as I also say in the book, you know, the end of a marriage is tragic, because you stand before God and you boom your vows, you know, and they go through you. And it's a big deal. But so is being shot at in war, and so is losing a parent, and so is losing a child. And so all of those things are impacting. We all have those challenges. And so what frustrates me mostly is the disease we have in our society of loneliness, where people are isolated. So you've got young children full of goodness, they're all born perfect, isolated by parents who are struggling, managing alone, grieving, one parent trying to hold a job down, not enough money, all those things, and losing control, shouting, letting off their steam without thinking, in automatic mode. We're unconscious most of the time. And then we have the young mothers, and then we have the elderly. So we have three parts of our society that are really struggling, and we're really trying to do things about it. Mental health is amazing. The therapeutic services are incredible. But there's a responsibility that us, I think, in our culture in the West, don't take enough time over, and that's our parenting and our scripting of our children. So I visited a young adult institution, a young offenders institution on Wednesday, and it took me about 24 hours to really absorb what I'd heard. And these were very young men. And they were quite nice to me, because probably I was like their mother, you know, they didn't see me as being antagonistic or anything. And I asked them, you know, I wanted to ask them why. I wanted to do the Simon Sinek. Do you know who I mean? You know, start with the why. I said, why? Why are you here? Tell me, why? And one young man, 20, he said, I didn't think before I took action. I didn't think. I've never thought. I said, what was it that triggered it? Was it anger? He said, yeah, it was anger. And I said, oh, gosh. He said, I've got another 7 months to sit on my own and think about that. And I thought, I found out afterwards that he'd lost a parent recently whilst he was in there. His girlfriend had been unfaithful, a girlfriend of 2 years. He was only 20. He's a young man, beautiful. And I said to him, is there anything you're frightened of? You know, you're a big, strong young man. What are you frightened of? He said, not being loved. I mean, I didn't rush out and hug him and say, I love you, but I wanted to say, you are so amazing. You know, you are so loved. And I didn't want to go further. It wasn't my place. That's not what I was there for. I was volunteering with Alpha. And Alpha is something that came along during the time of my first experience of infidelity in my book. And the reason I only talk about that is because it's the first one, and it was the biggest. And parents, you know, I couldn't really share it, and I was encouraged to go, and it was amazing. It was I took my coat off, my victim coat off, my sorry coat off, my survivor coat off, and I just was allowed to just be really open. And I was taught how to forgive, which was mind-blowing. And someone said, oh, you don't have to do that on your own. You know, when you forgive, something happens in the heavens and everyone's set free. And I thought, okay, I'm going to try it. And I had a lot of people around me. I was on my own with 2 small babies. And I had a lot of people around me saying, open the Bible at Psalm 23. Lord is my shepherd, the most powerful thing in the Bible. You don't have to evangelize. We're not evangelizing you, but you might feel better. You know, you might sleep more deeply. And then someone said, the devil runs at the weakest Christian on his knees. And I thought, well, you know, a grain of sand, that's all I need. You know, I didn't want to be evangelized. I already had a faith, but they were amazing people. and they were all from different faiths. And every week, do you know that when it starts, about 800 young people arrive? Now, why are they all there? They don't pay to be there. They don't leave their telephone number. They don't leave their email. They arrive if they want, they leave if they want. Why the following week are there 1,000? All different nationalities, all different ages, barristers, judges, alcoholics, drug addicts, people who've been through super challenges, who just want to belong and understand their value, you know? And it's really humbling, and they're so interesting that everyone has got such an amazing story. So I think I'd also add my magic wand would make me permanently teachable, you know, permanently teachable, because I learn something from everyone. We are so entitled sometimes, you know, and we throw our weight around, and actually we're not really, you know, we just get back what we give out, don't we? The boomerang, boom, and it comes back. So we don't need to retaliate if someone hurts us. So it's all going to happen anyway. They're going to learn the lesson somehow, right?
Absolutely.
So yeah, so that's where I kind of came away from that amazing experience. I'm being invited back next Wednesday. I said to one chap, he was frustrated about not getting into the library, and I said, "What do you like to read?" And he said, "Non-fiction, autobiographies." And I said, "That is so cool, because you can read about your hero and you can emulate their life, you know, if you want." And I said, "Do you write?" And he said, "No." I said, "Write. Tell me or somebody in your head on that paper what you're going through now. When that is put out there," I said, "I'll help you. I'll give you a structure if you want. But all you need to do is speak it into your phone or speak it into your laptop, and just or just do a mind map of the most exciting and difficult trials you've been through, or the best bits of life, or what your mother said to me." You know, my son, when he was 6, his granny died. And he said to me, "I really miss Granny," one night. And I said, "Oh, darling, what do you miss?" "Well, she used to come up when she was babysitting us, and she'd give us a hug, and she'd say, 'Don't you worry, it'll all be all right in the morning.'" You know, wow, that was just what he remembered. That was his security. You know, be okay in the morning. I don't need to worry. It's fine. You know, and so we have so much impact on our children, and it makes me really sad, because every single person, you and me included, is unconscious until we become adults. And we are parented by our parents who are unconscious. And they're unconscious because their parents were unconscious. And we're following cultural rituals and of creed and money ideas and poverty and riches and children and illnesses that we're meant to inherit. I mean, the body renews itself. And we know now that the heart brain impacts us. So we know the body holds the score. If you're heartbroken, I had a shock. What happened 5 years later? I had an autoimmune condition that started, and I still have it. I think there's quite a lot of evidence saying the body holds the score if it's not understood or released by helping another person. Anyway, didn't draw breath, did I?
No, what you're saying here is really powerful, and this is, you know, such an important point to make, because we all could do more and could love more, and we could just spend more time with people, and just to ask, you know, how are you? How was your day? I think, you know, in the society that we live in, we're too quick to ask, and as we're asking the question, how are you, we're off already.
Well, someone said to me that when you say in England, "How do you do?" the worst thing is if someone tells you. Well, now you mention it, I had a shit night and I didn't do it. But, oh God, thank goodness you asked. I've been burdened all day with that. And yeah, that's the ultimate nightmare of how do you do, isn't it?
and that is the problem, isn't it? That is the problem. Yeah. In fact, we're shocked and surprised when somebody actually tells us how they are. We're already looking at the clock and thinking, you know, this, I wish I never asked, which is terrible.
It's terrible. When I became a mediator, I had a lovely Swedish vicar. They call them präst, it's priest, whereas here priest is Catholic and not Protestant is vicar, right? But he said to me, "Oh, Christel," in his Swedish accent, I'm a middle child and you're a middle child, and you became a mediator and I became a priest." And I remember thinking, yeah, so we discussed what the attributes of a good vicar is versus a good mediator. And they're not that different. Not that one means you're ordainable, of course, but when I was mediating, the hardest, toughest thing to learn was that I had no value. My view was of no interest. So the person in dispute needed to say, because we all fear rejection. So we fear misunderstanding. We fear that, and they want to say to you, I'm really a nice person. I didn't really mean to do this. You know, I don't know how it happened. I was really tired that day and somebody was really nasty to me and the car in front of me braked. And I don't know, I'm just a really good human being. Okay, so when you say to them, I know you're a good human being, I'm not going to judge you. I'm not allowed to do that. I want to give you a really lovely environment, which is really safe. And my view is not a value. You can never sympathize because it's patronizing often. You can never tell your view because it's entitled, because it's your life, not theirs. So you're not allowed. All you're doing is saying, it's confidential. Tell me more. Tell me more. And repeating back to them, have I understood you right? Is this what you're saying or have I misunderstood? Can you clarify? Tell me a bit about that. What happened to that? What was that? And then, guess what? They knew the answer all along. People don't need advice. They need respect. And they need to be told that what they're saying and who they are is of value. And that's why mediation is such a superb thing. And I'll always be a fledgling because my mentor had 54 years at the bar as a judge. I mean, he's an extraordinary man. His shoulders are so broad, there is nothing he can't deal with. You name it, United Nations, 9 nations. He stays up all night. He's an incredible human being. His soul is so amazing. And he's come out of what I suppose, and I'm not sure he'd say it, but my grandfather was a judge, he would say he's come out of judgment into a level of justice. Because you're giving a person justice, aren't you? You're saying, I'm not here to make a comment about you. I'm just here to listen, and you're going to tell me. And then if it's a dispute with 2 people, you say, what would you like me to take to the other person? Because they don't have to sit together. And why don't you write it down? And then I'll come back to you in a minute. And you go to the next person and you do the same thing. And guess what? You can solve a problem that might have taken 5 years in a court, £5,000 in a court, your whole bank account, destroyed your relationship at home, made you ill because there's no freedom, and the mediation gives you freedom. So now there's a law that says you must be offered mediation before you do anything else, which is fantastic, I think.
Yeah, such great value from this. And, you know, when you're talking about courts at the moment, it seems grand and it's different from what the average person is dealing with. How can they mediate a bit more? And also, if they find themselves in dispute, you know, what can they do to have that empathy, perhaps, towards the person that they've got the quarrel with?
So I think it would be difficult, as friends of mine are going through at the moment. They've got a guy who's above them in the flat above, doing his drilling, you know, renovating his apartment. And it starts at 8 every morning and it finishes at 5 every night. And they have 3 little babies, 2 twin boys and another baby. And they're exasperated. This is starting this like being in an MRI scan. You know, I don't know if you've ever had an MRI scan, but they are like being next to a drill all day long. Well, how do you keep your cool? Quite difficult. Quite difficult. So there are situations where I can see you would be incandescent and, you know, want to knock the door down with your foot. But ideally you wouldn't. And I think neighborhood disputes are hugely problematic because, you know, everyone thinks, this is my house, you're ruining my life, you know. I would say if you have a mediator, you have somebody who can go in and say, where on the bridge would you like to meet? What would make it better for you? Would the weekends not working, would that be okay? Would it be okay if I start my drilling, or they do everything and start drilling after lunch, you know, and they go on in the afternoon? Could you tell me how long this process is going to take? So you get a mediator and you say, what would really settle it for you fairly? If you were the guy above and you had to do your property and you were living through the mess and you've been given a price and the builders have got to do it. And then that person's disarmed because they're okay, they're listening and they get it, they understand. And then you've got a positioning of a possible deal. I mean, I had a mediator tutor. She had these two men in the same office. There were two entrances to the offices. They came in and they argued so vehemently. She lay down on the floor like you do when you have a stampede of horses. You know, if you lie on the ground, they don't hurt you. She lay down on the floor of this office whilst they were arguing. And after a bit, they kind of looked over their shoulder and thought, what the hell's she doing? Are you okay? Are you dead? She said, no, I'm out of the stampede. She said, I can't handle it. You guys, you're just into your own thing. And they shut up. And they thought it was funny. So she kind of disarmed them for a minute. And she said, I'm going to do a deal. You got to work in the same office. You use different staircases. We move your offices. You don't meet in the canteen at lunchtime, right? You go into lunch at that time. You go into that lunch. If you see each other, you don't speak. You agree to differ. You agree to differ. And when you walk away with that out of this dispute. And they agreed. They were like, okay, matey, I'll use that staircase. And use. I thought that was brilliant.
And it's again, these are the everyday situations that we find ourselves in. And again, it's just seeing things from the other person's perspective, finding the middle ground where you can both agree. And, you made some great points there. Now, I can see you're very passionate about this. Would you say that this is a calling? This is who you are now? This is what we can expect moving forward?
Well, it's funny. I've always had, I do hope, let's start again. I do feel I have compassion. I have more compassion. I think the greater than deeper the wound sometimes. When we come out of ourselves, we have a different perspective about life. Not very much matters except the people we love around us and to serve others, actually. And we all do it in some way, but yes is the answer. I think I've found that I listen, although I talk a lot, don't I? I mean, you have to give it to me. I'm a good talker, but I'm a phenomenal listener. And years ago, I worked for an American consultancy firm, and I was sent into the field to look at their people. They were multinational companies, so the product was obviously cool and very successful. The people were the ones in disarray. There was a lot of greed. There was a bit of fraud here and there thrown in or whatever. But I went into the companies that had hired them. And I found that I could almost, since I was a child, sense the word that was the fib in the sentence or the embellishment. And I think women are probably quite good at that. Women kind of fire on all cylinders, which is probably what drives a lot of men crazy. I went to an amazing talk and they put a man's head in a thing and put his blips on, and then they did a woman. They asked them the same question, and the woman went off like a Christmas tree, and the man lit up in two parts of his brain. It's just we're made differently, right? But women are very good at deflecting stress or upset. They're very good at. I'm quite good at changing the conversation if there's an uncomfortable moment. It's not my place to go there, make someone uncomfortable. So yeah, it's a calling. I've been coaching. I don't like the word coaching because a lot of coaches don't lead the life that they want everyone else to lead. But like you, I think you probably have a similar calling. And I think it's very humbling to be, I like the young. I love the young and I love the elderly. And I'm about to embark on a really beautiful project because I think it's pretty difficult. When my mother was in her care home, and I hope this isn't going to a lot of people, but I used to call the people in the care home the inmates. Oh, it was so funny. And they knew that. They used to tease them, but their families never visited them. They're paying all the money, and all the money's dwindling from the inheritance because they're in there. Let's be honest, where there's a relative, there's a will, there's a relative. And so, and they'd forget to visit them. And it was actually heartbreaking. And I fell in love with about 8 or 9. I got to know some very beautiful souls in there. And I would ask them, and I had a friend, she said, every time I go to my father and mother, I'm exhausted. I tell them about the garden and the children and the dogs. I tell them about the church service, the book I'm reading. I said, stop talking about yourself. Ask your mother, when did she first fall in love? What happened behind the bike shed? And why was it the bike shed? And what is it the first time she got cross? And what did her parents, what was the worst thing her mother said to her? And what was the best thing? And who was her worst teacher? And what makes her really angry? And what's the biggest frustration about the young today? And what do you think about drugs and the fact that we're in a cocaine world? And what do you think about sex and the youth? And how the dissipation of family, and they're unbelievable. They're so incredibly interesting, and they're so funny, and they don't give a damn what they say because they've been there and done that.
Yeah.
So I love them, and I'd love to do documentaries, and I'd love to bring us to. When I write, I want to. I should say when I go into a seminar, and I think I put this in the book. I want to be moved. I want to have someone cast a bit of light in my shadow. I want to come away thinking, wow, that was an amazing story. How incredible that person was. Could I have done that? I don't know. You know, I want to be changed and shifted in my perspective. And so when I can only be my authentic self, that's all we can be, right?
Absolutely.
But I would I'd like to move people and wake them up, because we're all unconscious until we one day think. I mean, I spoke to a man in Canada, a colleague yesterday, and he said his girlfriend has just chopped all her hair off because it was really vital for, I don't know why, but she wanted to change her. She's 30. She wanted to change her look, and her parents are Egyptian, and she said, why have I followed this and this and this all my life? This isn't me. And she'd come to this realization that she had embodied all their rituals from their culture, and that she'd been born in Canada and wasn't really allowed to adopt the Canadian mindset. And she got to 30, and she's just hitting 30. And she's like, wow, that's not me at all. I can be me, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, good for her, because she's come to that realization. Still quite young, so she's still got plenty of years ahead of her, and she can be just her. You know, everything you say is just so golden. You know, can listen to you for hours on end. And, you know,
I have got a funny story.
Go on, tell us.
I've got one, I've just remembered one. So I went to some great friends for Sunday lunch years ago when I was eating meat. And it was a beautiful fillet of beef. And they had this beautiful kitchen, this huge oven, and and they chopped off the ends of the fillet of beef, and they put them in a different. And I said, "What are you doing? That's interesting." I don't know. I mean, and she said to her husband, "Darling, why do I do that? Why do we do that?" He said, "My grandmother did that. She had a tiny oven. She couldn't get the whole fillet of beef in." So I said, "You've got lager." You know. And I thought, how unconscious is that in every part of our lives? You know, I hope they forgive me if they ever hear this, but I haven't mentioned the names. But that in that little small thing is just an indicator, isn't it?
And that's the thing, isn't it? You know, we do things because that's the way it's always been done, and not being bold and daring and to go out and change things. And, you know, you come from a good place, you've got a good heart, you want to do well for people. And, you know, that means a lot. And if there's anything that we can take, it's just that, you know, give to others, and just don't be selfish, you know, listen, ask people, don't tell them about your day, ask them how their day went. And as you said, you know, we can always learn something. There's learning never stops.
And I think we need to be less entitled about our views as well. Just because we're younger or we're older or we're the parent, or, you know, I get very frustrated about, I think parenting's a big calling, because the boys were IVF first attempt. I can't tell you I live in gratitude every day of my life. How that happened, I don't know. It's the biggest privilege, you know. And I think I said, you know, when Fabian was young, he would yell everything. And I said to him, what you're saying is fantastic. He'd be about 4 or 5. I can't hear you because you're shouting at mummy. You know, can you just tell me now? Sit there now. Tell me what it is. I really want to know. And you could see this realization of thinking, I'm saying something that's okay. I mean, I'm important enough to say what I feel, you know? I wasn't saying, pipe down, be quiet, you know? I was saying, want to hear what you say, but so I think respecting our children, not judging them, I get, you know, they teach me something every single day, seriously. How many children have you got, Amos?
At the moment, 0.
Ah,
Yeah.
young thing, you.
Christel, our interview's coming to an end already.
I know.
It's been
So
so
lovely to
good.
see you.
Thank you so
Oh,
much. And of course, How to Fire Your Husband in Easy Steps, Miraculous Divorce. The book is everywhere. And of course, now there's the audiobook as well.
and I've narrated it. I narrate it. So I do voiceovers. So yeah. I hope you get it and listen, Amos.
I'll surprise you. You just wait, okay? So
Okay.
we'll put all the links, of course, in the description so
Thank
that the
you.
audience can connect with you. Christel, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, Amos.
If you want some amazing inspiration, check out the videos next to me, and I'll see you right there.